Now from WATN, it's Local 24 This Week with Richard Ransom.
All right, welcome to Local 24 This Week. I am Richard Ransom. We're here every Sunday at 9 a.m. and 10:35 p.m. to give you the real story behind the big stories. And our topics today, making MATA matter. The city's public transit system really doesn't right now. And Mayor Harris pitched a plan to make MATA relevant again, but reaction was swift and not very positive. Magazine Mess. Memphis Magazine stepped in at big time with this caricature cover featuring the 3 top mayoral candidates for its September issue. I'm going to ask my panel about how the publication tried to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And while we're on the subject, where things stand on the Memphis mayor's race right now, including a 10-year-old tweet by one of the candidates that came back to cause some trouble this week. But first, my one-on-one segment, and we are glad to have the U.S. Attorney for West Tennessee with us today, D. Michael Dunavant. What does the D stand for?
David.
All right, very good. So now you know. How long have you been in the job now? How's it going?
Almost 2 years. Was sworn in on September 21 of 2017, so we're coming up on a 2-year anniversary in the office.
Well, you wanted to talk about a big symposium you're having in town this week that's bringing in, what did you tell me? People from all over the country, really. And yes. Tell folks what it's about and why Memphis.
We're really excited about it. So the Department of Justice, back in 2017, right when I was coming on, started a brand new national initiative called the Public Safety Partnership. And they identified several cities across the country to provide resources to in training and technical assistance for law enforcement. And Memphis was one of the first 12 cities selected really because of our elevated violent crime rate. And so this week, starting on Monday, we are hosting the 3rd annual National PSP Public Safety Partnership Symposium on Violent Crime here in Memphis. And we're going to be having representatives from 17 other cities across the country, over 400 law enforcement officers, and 13 United States attorneys who are going to be meeting to share ideas and best practices about ways to combat violent crime.
And what do you hope everyone gains from this when they go home? What is the main purpose after you share best practices?
Well, what we hope is that people don't have to reinvent the wheel. What it really did for us is help to focus our resources, provide data-driven analysis of the best ways to solve violent crime problems, and we want to share that information with our colleagues across the country. We want to train law enforcement on the best techniques for investigations, prosecutions, the way to use technology and things like that. And so we really hope to encourage people as they go back to their jurisdictions across the country in the DOJ framework to really dig in, use these ideas, and reduce their violent crime rate.
Let me ask you, you always hear about this rift, and maybe it's a healthy rift or tension between federal government and federal law enforcement and local law enforcement. How do you combat that? Is that part of the challenge you have when implementing this kind of...
Well, it has been in the past, but I'm glad you asked that because that's exactly what the Public Safety Partnership Initiative has done for us here in Memphis. We call it the PSP team, and part of the PSP team involves the Memphis Police Department, the Shelby County Sheriff's Office, District Attorney Amy Wyrick's office, as well as some other federal components like FBI and DEA and ATF. And literally, we just check our egos at the door. We get out of our silos. We share intelligence and information. We cooperate on investigations. And we have started, as a result of this partnership, really some great initiatives here in Memphis and Shelby County that are paying dividends, and such as our carjacking initiative. We know that in the last year or year and a half, we've really spiked in carjacking incidents, but we were able to come together, develop a model for responding and investigating those cases, and we've been able to indict several of those federally and drive down that carjacking rate here in Memphis. So we think it's really a process that works.
And what is the key to getting people to check those egos at the door and smooth over that relationship?
Well, it's really about getting to reduce violent crime without worrying about who gets the credit or who gets whatever resources. We share resources, and when I say resources, I mean grant dollars, I mean investigative manpower. It really is everyone being committed to working together for a common goal. And the good news is here in Memphis and Shelby County, and really across West Tennessee, we don't have those rifts or those disagreements as much as you may see across the country. So Memphis, in many ways, is kind of a trailblazer in this area of collaboration and cooperation.
one of the more recent examples, I guess, of the kind of law enforcement I think you're talking about happened just a couple weeks ago at the end of August, Operation Bluff City Blues. I imagine that was a cooperative effort as well.
Absolutely.
You arrested a lot of folks for a lot of different crimes.
We did. And let me tell you how that started. I called upon the U.S. Marshal Service, and what we know is that the U.S. Marshal Service is the preeminent federal agency that is involved in fugitive apprehension. Local police and local sheriff's offices have a lot of outstanding warrants, felony warrants for very violent people that we're seeking. We're looking for to get them in custody, get them involved in the court process so we can adjudicate those cases. I knew that we needed to focus on violent crime warrants that were outstanding and locate some of those. And so I asked the U.S. Marshal Service to put together an operation, and they did. Again, working with the Memphis Police Department, the Shelby County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Bonner hosted us from his headquarters there out in East Memphis. The District Attorney's Office and ATF, we were able to arrest over a 2-week period of time 214 outstanding felony offenders with warrants. 79 of those were documented gang members, and 34 of those were wanted for murder. So we really feel like we were able to make our city and our county safer by that operation.
Explain to me why wait for the big splash to arrest somebody for murder. That seems to me like something that you would want to arrest them as quickly as possible.
Well, absolutely. And let me just say this. It's a coordinated response. And so when you bring that many agents and officers together to really focus on it with data-driven intelligence, with, again, the expertise of the Marshal Service, you're able to do, obviously, a larger volume. But I would tell you that day in and day out, the Memphis Police Department, Shelby County Sheriff's Office are serving warrants, taking people into custody, including very violent and dangerous people. But what we wanted to do was really to focus those efforts and those resources in a very big way to make an impact, and I think we have.
I should ask you about something that I saw some chatter about on social media, and maybe the pictures were misleading, but and I went through as many pictures as I could find and found all of the suspects arrested were African American, and it rubbed some people the wrong way, saying, well, there were any white people that committed violent crimes too. Was that an accurate perception people had? Were there some Caucasians who were arrested as part of that raid? And if not, why not?
The answer is that seems to be someone's misled on that.
Okay.
Yes, there were people of all races, quite frankly, who were picked up during this operation. I would tell you that when we look at an outstanding warrant, it does not necessarily have the race at the top of it. It has the crime and the name and the last known address. That's what we're looking for. And so we're really focused on the dangerous nature of the offender, whether they're gang-related, and what their underlying prior criminal history is. Part of the operation included sex offender violators who were checked by probation and parole, and many of those involve people across the spectrum of races and diversity.
Now, you also promised even larger results like this. What can you tell me about what's ahead?
Well, what I can tell you is that anytime you do a large operation like this and you take a large amount of people into custody at one time, many times that gives us a chance to cultivate new intelligence and new information from those people who are now in custody who wish to cooperate and talk with us. And so they give us information where we can follow up on leads for unsolved crimes. We can pursue other leads for people who are still outstanding, and we can solve other crimes that we can make charging decisions on. And so I would tell you, when 214 people come into custody, it produces a lot of intelligence information that we're following up on now, and you'll see more to come in the fall.
Okay, I know you'll keep us posted.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir, for coming in.
Thank you very much.
U.S. Attorney Michael Donovan here. We appreciate him being here, and we'll be back in a minute with my roundtable right after this.
Hardee's new 2-3 More menu makes breakfast on the go easy. 2 cinnamon and raisin biscuits or a sausage biscuit, $2. Bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, $3. Hardee breakfast platter, $4. Because mornings are better on autopilot. Hardee's new 2-3 More menu.
There was a time when things were pretty bleak in Memphis. Taxes were going up. City services were being slashed. People and jobs were moving away. Fast forward to today. There are 20,000 more jobs, and businesses are moving back into the core city. Under Jim Strickland, our police force is on the rise. Our city's on the move. And we've passed 4 balanced budgets without a tax increase. Let's keep Memphis moving forward. Jim Strickland, leadership matters.
Mattress Firm's Labor Day sale has been extended. Through Tuesday, it's your last chance to get a king mattress for the price of a queen or a queen for the price of a twin. Don't miss the best deal of the season with savings of up to $600. Plus, take home a free adjustable base with your mattress purchase of just $4.99. Our customers are raving about these deals. Experience it yourself today. Don't wait, this sale ends Tuesday. Your budget stretches further at Mattress Firm.
$2, bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, $3, hearty breakfast platter, $4. Breakfast isn't rocket science. It's way easier. Hardee's new 2-3 More menu.
Small businesses drive our nation's economy, employing about half of the country's private sector workforce.
Here's coffee.
Thanks so much.
When you shop at local small businesses, you help the entire community thrive.
Hello, I'm Congressman David Custall. Small businesses unite our community and they bolster our local economy. Shop local and help spur innovation and job creation in West Tennessee.
Brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
You're watching Local 24 This Week with Richard Ransom.
All right, Local 24 reporter Mike Matthews and political analyst Otis Sanford here now to talk about some other issues making news this past week. And I think the MATA story is the one that's getting the most play on my social media anyway. People are really having, I think, a healthy conversation about what is the next step for our public transit system. It's interesting to me how many people really don't seem to understand how many folks need public transit, and yet I can't blame them for seeing all the empty buses and saying, well, why would we want to put more money into this program if the buses we have now aren't working? So there's this, I don't know, there's an incongruence, I guess, in the pitch that's trying to be made and people's understanding of the problem in a lot of cases. And I don't know if Mayor Harris, in pitching this fee he wants, has made the case enough as to why people should be willing to pay $145 for each car they have beyond 2. In additional fees to help fund MATA. What do you guys think?
Well, I just think that the first thing that people did when they heard about this, they looked at their own pocketbooks here and to see how is this going to affect me, and most of them who have multiple cars in the family concluded this is going to affect me negatively. And what they were not even thinking about the need for improvements at MATA, the people who use it and how it will help to alleviate some poverty issues in this community. Well, that's where the
political leadership comes in to sell that vision.
Well, he did not do that on the front end.
Well, he's got plenty of time, though, Otis.
Well, I know
until February.
I agree. But again, making the pitch and emphasizing the $145 without doing enough to talk about that need, I think that might be where the mayor fell a little short here. That's all I'm saying.
What's your take, Mike?
Well, I first like to remind people that, for example, if you live in Mississippi or you live in Missouri, you pay a heck of a lot more than $145 extra a month. It's
our registration fees are very low.
Extremely low. Extremely low. So many have been spoiled by that over the years. I remember in North Carolina having a car trying to pay $2,500 registration fee because it's property tax.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So number one, a lot of this is just, I don't understand it. Number two, if you don't like this plan, what do you want? Because as the mayor said, I can raise the taxes, I can raise property taxes, I can charge everybody more for their registration, or I can just say don't do it. Every expert in this community has come forward saying you gotta have a basic transportation system. And 30 million more gives you a basic transportation system. So I don't know what more people want other than for it to go away. When I hear people say, well, they need to run at a profit. You show me one public transportation operation in this country that runs at a profit.
It's always subsidized. That's true.
Yeah, but Mike, I think hit on something in your alternatives here that I've heard other people talk about. Instead of charging what is estimated to be 17% of the addresses in Shelby County that have 3 or more cars, why don't you put a much smaller fee on every car? I mean, we already do have the wheel tax, which is $50. That's true. But add some more there and continue to make the case that this is strictly for public transportation, for MATA, to help alleviate poverty, to help people get to the jobs. Just charge everybody a much smaller amount than $145.
See, and that's where I think you find the basic problem. These folks don't care about MATA. For the vast majority of these folks complain,
they've never had to ride a bus.
They've never ridden a bus in their lives. Bus riders are just kind of like those people, as far as they're concerned. They're not going to, if you raise the fees by $1, they're going to be angry about it. It's a tough sell.
It was interesting. I did some research, and what do other cities do? What are their revenue sources when they have to fund something like this? Yes, registration fees is one option, but I was amazed at all the other options. Do you know that Shelby County has the ability, if it wants to raise its gas tax by a penny if it wanted to? Real estate transfer fees, rental car taxes, tire taxes, vehicle battery taxes are used, stormwater fees, parking. There are a lot of other options.
Yes, absolutely, and they have time. I don't think what you saw this past week and what you see in February when they finally voted, I don't think it's going to look at all like the plan that's out there right now.
What about the perceived snub of Wanda Halbert, the Shelby County clerk, that she wasn't looped into the conversation before the big splash?
Well, I think she had a little bit of a valid argument here, especially since she's going to have to be the one to try to figure out all of this. I think this is where Mayor Harris fell a little short politically. I don't see anything wrong with him just picking up the phone or just going over and seeing Clerk Wanda Halbert and just letting her know confidentially, I'm going to be proposing this.
She would collect the fee, we should point out, which is why she...
I don't see anything wrong with him giving her just a heads up that he's going to propose this to the county commission. Don't just come out and say, I promised I was going to give it to the county commission, and then the person who's administering has no information about it. He gave her plenty of opportunity by not telling her to come out and complain the way she did, and now we have another political little kerfuffle going on here.
We do have a pretty good kerfuffle going on between those two right now over a variety of things I'm hearing. I find it kind of funny. Wanda Halbert would be the first person at the city council meetings, and when she was on that board, who would complain that other people in county government were being told before us, we're the city council, we need to be told first. So Lee Harris, followed that procedure with the county commission, and now she's upset about that. It boils down to this. Nobody's going to be happy about this at all. Could Lee Harris have done a better job? Sure he could have. Sure he could have. Wanda Halbert, her involvement other than taking the money, you got me. I don't know. So,
well, but she's the one. She's got to figure this stuff out, though, Mike.
She's just got to figure the bills out. This is what she does every year anyway.
I guess I don't blame her for being a little bit perturbed by this. And again, this could have been handled with a little bit of political savvy to calm the waters, tell her to keep quiet about it. I'm going to do it. Tell her that morning, you go to the county commission an hour later, and then she can't complain about it that way. That's all I'm saying.
Now, what about Jenny's piece? Jenny DiPrizio had a story about looking at people who have 3 cars or more by zip code. This was interesting to me because I think maybe people assume that this is primarily going to hurt those folks with means, primarily out in the suburbs. Well, we found that may not be the case. 38139 in Germantown has 1,800 people with 3 or more cars. 38109 in Southwest Memphis has 2,061 folks with 3 or more cars.
Excuse me, that's a very valid point there that she's bringing up here. This was supposed to not bother those on limited income. Clearly, it's going to bother some people on limited income. So this is one thing that I think you'll see county commissioners, especially, looking at it going, there's a problem here that has to be looked at.
Well, it goes to the argument someone with low income may have 3 or more cars because car number 1's transmission went out. Car number 2, something else happened. Car number 3, and so they start to stack up because they have to have cars to get around in this town. The bus transportation is so bad.
Plus, you have a lot of families, a lot of households where a lot of people in the family live in one household. That's not that unusual in this city. I think that perception goes to the fact that there might be a lot of people in the suburbs who don't necessarily know that much about what's going on in the city of Memphis, and they made some assumptions here that this is only going to impact suburban, more well-to-do places in Shelby County and not in a place like Fraser or Westwood or Hickory Hill.
What we have not addressed is how businesses, especially those with large fleets, might find ways to get around this tax. We'll talk about that at a later time. We're out of time, but we'll be right back. We're going to talk about the Memphis mayor's race right after this.
We all know that health care works best when you and your doctor make decisions. But a bill in Congress would give more control to government bureaucrats and insurance companies. They're doing it in the name of a real problem, surprise medical bills. Their solution includes price fixing and looks more like Medicare for all. That's a prescription for fewer doctors, longer wait times, and less access to care. Call Congress. Don't let government and insurance companies stand between you and your doctor. Price fixing is not the answer. Paid for by the Market Institute.
There are parts of Tennessee that never seem to change, where a relaxing drive is commonplace and finding peace of mind is right around the corner. Have questions about Medicare supplements and Dental Vision Silver? Just click, call, or visit one of our many offices. At Farm Bureau Health Plans, protecting your best years has never gone out of style.
Whether your beauty routine is 3 steps or 57, make Nature's Bounty Hair, Skin, and Nails Step 1. It's the #1 brand uniquely formulated for silky hair, glowing skin, and healthy nails. Nature's Bounty, because you're better off healthy.
America's veterans are more than a source of pride. They're a source of strength. When our veterans thrive, our communities thrive. With your support, our veterans can get career and education opportunities as well as benefits they've earned.
I'm Senator Marsha Blackburn. Our veterans have given Tennessee so much, and it's time to do something for them. Find out how you can support them right in your community.
This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
You're watching Local 24 This Week with Richard Ransom.
All right, in this segment, first things I want to address is that Memphis Magazine cover. And first things first on that, I want to say is no newsroom is perfect. We all know that. We all make mistakes, but this one really drew a lot of ire. The caricature you see on your screen right there that's on the cover of the September issue and how it portrayed the 3 top candidates, notably Tammy Sawyer. And the magazine tried to do the best it could with a half-hearted apology at first and a more full-throated apology after that, trying to take the magazines off store shelves, which as a journalist I kind of had a problem with that image. Nonetheless, do you think they handled it as poorly as I'm making it sound, or did they do everything they could?
What do you think?
I think they handled it poorly. I'm someone who gets offended, actually, by people who are concerned about caricatures, because I was looking online this week. Yeah, precisely. I was looking at things this week online of Barack Obama with thick lips and a broad nose and all that. It happens, okay? And just because a political candidate doesn't like it doesn't necessarily make it wrong. However, it's not really done well. This was not done well. I'm not an art critic, but this was not done well and needed to go.
Yeah, I think they handled it completely the wrong way. Poorly is a kind word for it. Yes, caricatures are just that, caricatures. But this was offensive to a lot of people in this community. The first apology was a ham-handed way of trying to tell people what they should and should not be offended by, which made people even more angry. And so the CEO came out the next day with a more, as you say, full-throated apology, and I think that was appropriate. Again, they have to deal with who's at the table when these decisions are made, and there are diverse voices at the table that can have an intelligent, broad-based, diverse conversation about what they should and should not be doing for the public that they serve, which is very diverse. That's all I'm saying.
Does it mean the end of caricatures if one of the candidates says, I don't like this, I find this offensive?
No, absolutely not.
Well, that seems like an awful lot of people say, in fact, the head of the Memphis Flyer says, if a small group, if any group finds something offensive, then it is offensive.
Well, let me ask you, because Tammy Sawyer posted on her Twitter feed that it's just another example of how the media has wronged her during the course of this campaign. Willie Harrington was vocal with you in an interview this week about how he's been wronged by the media. And so we have 2 challengers of an incumbent who aren't doing any interviews hardly.
That's right.
Right.
Which strikes me as a funny way to try and beat an incumbent. It's kind of difficult to do when you won't do interviews.
Absolutely.
Oh, I don't think there's any question.
We got open invitation to Harrington, Sawyer, and Strickland to come on this show next week. Only Strickland has said yes. Now,
well, maybe they've made up their minds that they, from their point of view, well, I'm not going to get fair treatment anyway, so why bother? I think that is a cop-out. Yes, this issue notwithstanding, I don't see where Tammy Sawyer has a lot to complain about. She has made some missteps.
So just find me one politician who hasn't been upset about media coverage.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, look, it goes, everybody's upset by it. Absolutely.
Grow up.
Right.
Well, bingo, right? Get a thicker skin. But when it comes to this, Richard, I mean, and I'll say it, you don't have to say it. In this case, Mayor Willie Harrington has always had good dealings with you. You have been fair to him over the years. Jim Strickland, yes. Tammy Sawyer, yes. All three people have been treated fairly by you. To suddenly say, no, I'm not going to come out and talk to you, just shows to me that they're not going to talk to anybody. It's just going to leave it out there in the open, you know, and their message goes out there all by itself with no questions, nothing at all like that.
You're upset in the case of Sawyer that there won't be a debate, so we give you this platform.
Right.
And, you know, as you and I have talked, she wouldn't be the first politician to have a news conference with two empty podiums and saying, I want to debate these two men, and they won't show up.
And they won't show up. And here's what I would say.
We would all cover it.
Here's what I would say. Here's what I think that they would say, and have the chair. It may be a stunt, but it is something that would get some media coverage and accomplish what she wants to have accomplished. I think the whining here, again, the magazine thing aside, the whining about how the media are treating these candidates is falling on some deaf ears here, especially where Ms. Sawyer is concerned, because there have been some major missteps here with her campaign and calling Strickland, you know, Angela Rye coming here and calling Strickland a racist, and then Tammy Sawyer saying, well, he is not anti-racist. I mean, all of that was just craziness.
And having Willie Harrington, of all people, defending Jim Strickland, saying, I've known this man for years and there's not a racist bone in his body.
Exactly.
So where does it sit right now?
Where it sits right now to me is that Jim Strickland is still in the driver's seat. I hear that his camp is looking to run up the numbers here and get as high as 60, maybe even higher % of the vote.
Well, then you have a mandate. And I got to cut off there, but we'll talk about this some more. We've got a few more weeks to go. Take a break. We'll be right back.
People, our sales now apply to only 10 frames.
A new low.
At VisionWorks, our sales are good on all of our frames.
Why are you so weird?
Get 60% off any pair of glasses, no exclusions. Really, VisionWorks. See the difference.
Today, Victory Auto has over 200 vehicles in inventory, and we will help you find the car that fits your needs and budget, no matter your credit score. Our staff will locate a car, truck, or SUV tailored to you with average monthly payments under $300 with affordable in-house financing. When the bank says no, Victory Auto says yes. Just drive your mouse to victoryauto.org, find a car, and apply for credit. It's that easy. Victory Auto, your buy here, pay here pros.
If you've been seriously disabled and can no longer work, it's time to consider getting your Social Security benefits started to help you pay for your bills and your life. Call Nahon Saharovich and Trotz at 683-7000. We've helped lots of clients get their disability benefits approved. Now that's security. So if you can't work due to these disabling conditions, call the Social Security lawyers of NST and let us start working to get your benefits approved and get you the security you deserve.
Call 683-7000.
This year, the city of Memphis and Shelby County honor 200 years while embracing the next 100 years to come. Join in as we celebrate our new century of soul.
Local 24 is a proud supporting partner of A New Century of Soul.
America's veterans are more than a source of pride. They're a source of strength. When our veterans thrive, our communities thrive. With your support, our veterans can get career and education opportunities as well as benefits they've earned.
Hello, I'm Congressman David Kustoff. Join me in thanking our nation's veterans. They've given so much in service to our country. Find out how you can support veterans in our community.
This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
My thanks to the U.S. Attorney and these two guys, and to you at home for being here. We'll see you next time for Local 24 this week.